Welcome to the TSD Mindfulness video for teaching number 27. I'm going to begin by reviewing a few of the teachings in the previous few videos. So teaching number 16, we learned about that we are a beginner each time we sit down to meditate. So this concept is so important because it helps us take some of the pressure off. It helps us be gentle with ourselves if we have a day of meditation in which we are just kind of all over the place, that we're very distracted, and that's okay. Just a reminder that each time you sit down to meditate, you are a beginner, a really good mindset to be in. And also this idea that when we learn mindfulness, a lot of it, a big part of a mindfulness practice is paying attention to the physical world. It's really a practice in noticing the sounds, noticing physical sensations. So birds chirping, fan blowing, the sound of your own breath, a body ache, some type of sensation, maybe some pressure on our body in some way, the temperature of the air, the movement of our chest as we're breathing, the sensation of our breath in our nostrils as you breathe. All these different things are aspects of our physical existence. So that's really the most beginner lesson to learn about mindfulness, is this practice of paying attention to the physical world. And we learned about the difference between single-pointed focus and open awareness. Single-pointed focus being we're paying attention to one particular thing. Maybe it's our breath, maybe it's some sounds, maybe it's our body, maybe we're doing a body scan. However, open awareness is different. Open awareness, we aren't paying attention to anything particular. Instead, we're just open to whatever comes into our consciousness, whether it is a sound, whether it is a thought, whether it is an emotion, or so forth. So those are the differences. And I like to teach the single point of focus, especially if I'm working with beginners, because it's much more straightforward. It's usually you're going to get a bigger bang for your buck paying attention to something like a sound, for example. So that's a good place to start with your beginner practice. And teaching number 17, we talked about our logic generates thoughts and our instinct generates thoughts. So this idea of where do our thoughts come from? They come from our logical beliefs that we have. They come from our instinctual responses. And I taught a technique called form versus content, which is based on a Buddhist teaching that involves observing the forms of our thinking rather than the content of our thinking. So the content of our thinking is the story. The form could be a symbolic image that represents that thinking. And so when we use that symbolic representation of our thinking, it helps us take a step back from our thinking. It's there, it's abstract, but it's there. And in teaching number 18, we talked about recognizing patterns of relationship between the mental field, the gut field, and the heart field. And so what that means is that our mental field can cause our gut field to react. Our own thinking, which is our mental field, can cause our nervous system, which is our gut field, to get triggered. Vice versa, our nervous system can get triggered, which will instigate certain types of thinking. Some fear thinking, worry thinking, action thinking would be some examples of what the type of thinking that our nervous system might instigate. Our mental field can affect our heart field when we have a deep emotion such as abandonment come up, and then our thinking might suppress the emotion of abandonment and just make it go away. And so we don't actually feel it, which isn't great because that's part of our healing process, is to feel it. Or our thinking could exacerbate it and make it into this really big emotion, bigger than it really needs to be. So that's one way the mental field can affect the heart field. And the heart field can affect the mental field because this emotion, these deep emotions can come up in the heart field, and then our mental field immediately goes into protection mode. But the thing is, having your fields cause all these interactions between each other actually exacerbates our stress. It exacerbates our distraction. So part of this practice of the TSD mindfulness is to allow these fields to just exist solely, more individually, without interacting with one another. So we're going to go on to teaching number 27, which is skipping quite a few teachings, but I'm going to be covering some of these teachings that we're skipping in 27 through 30. But teachings 19 through 26, definitely read those in the book Tame, Soothe, Dwell, the ebook Tame, Soothe, Dwell, because those are some really good teachings which I don't have videos for. So again, that's teachings number 19 through 26. So that's quite a few. That's 8 teachings. But we're going to go ahead and begin in this video with teaching number 27, and we are on the list. It's the last list of 4, and the list is called How to Integrate with Divine Flow. How to integrate with divine flow. And the first teaching on that list is Recognize Your Integration Experience. So what does integration mean, right? Okay, so for the TSD mindfulness practice, there's 4 steps. The first one is to tame the mental field, and we use some very traditional mindfulness techniques to tame our mental field. And then the next step is to soothe your gut field. So if there's any kind of trigger, if your nervous system is triggered in any way, we're soothing that trigger. And then the third, you're moving your consciousness into your heart and really opening up to those deeper emotions, and self-compassion is an important part of that step. And then the fourth is then integrating with divine flow. And divine flow is this source of energy that I'll get into in a little bit more detail, but it's this, divine energy that comes from source and that we can really experience during our meditation practice. So right now, I'm specifically talking about how do we recognize that this is happening? How do we know when we're in meditation that we have really integrated with divine flow? So one way that you can tell that you've integrated is by the guidance that you're getting. If the guidance that you're getting, because that's one of the things that happens when you integrate with divine flow, is you get guidance. But the guidance that you get is in the moment, for the moment type of guidance. So if you're getting guidance for like next year, or 5 years from now, or in the next month or something, that's not this type of divine flow experience that I'm explaining. That this is really going to be in the moment, for the moment kind of guidance. And so an example of that, if you've read the book Eat, Pray, Love, I know that's kind of an old book now, but Elizabeth Gilbert tells her story of how she's kind of like breaking down in her bathroom, and she's on her bathroom floor and she's distraught, she's crying, and she kind of prays to God, what do I do? And what she hears is, go to bed. Just go to sleep, get some rest, go to bed. Another way to recognize that you are experiencing integration is by looking at your decision process. If you were making a decision in that moment, how are you making the decision? Are you making that decision by kind of thinking about different scenarios? That's not integration with divine flow. You're in your mental field. You're using your mental field. If you're making a decision based on these gut instinctual reactions, then no, that's not integrated with divine flow. That's your basing decisions on your nervous system. But if you are integrated with divine flow, it's actually not going to feel like a decision process. It's not going to feel like you're making a decision. It's just going to be, it's all laid out there for you. All the things that are for you to do, to move into this direction are there. And it's just a matter of you taking that step in that direction and accepting and moving into whatever that is. So it might be, I'm going to reset my boundaries because this is what my heart is presenting to me. It might be that simple. It's just like, oh, I need to reset my boundaries. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do that. It doesn't feel like a decision. It's just there. And it seems kind of obvious. So if your guidance is very clear, it's likely you are integrated. Another way to recognize that you have integrated is noticing where you are gaining your sense of security from. So when I integrate, I experience a shift of protection from my mental field to this divine flow, from my gut field to this divine flow. So normally when we're walking around, we are gaining our sense of protection from our thinking. Our thinking is going to keep us protected, or our nervous system responses are going to keep us protected. This is how we're going to survive, is how we normally go around. But when we are integrated, we kind of shift away from that, and instead we seek protection from divine flow itself. We have this sense of security and knowing from divine flow itself. So it feels a little bit different. And what I've noticed is that this shift in away from the mental field and the gut field, and the shift to relying on security through divine flow can actually bring up some anxiety, because it's so unnatural. It's just not the way our DNA is programmed. We're not programmed to do this. So it can feel very unnatural, can feel very scary, can bring up some anxiety. For me, it's a feeling of kind of falling off of a cliff or being too close to a cliff. It's like, whew, right? But it really does get easier the more that you do it. You become more comfortable with that letting go aspect. But with all that being said, I will tell you that I really know I'm integrated by the way I feel, So I feel like a lift. I feel a slight physical lift, as if my body is lighter. I feel an energetic lift, as if I'm less dense. I feel a mental lift, as if intellectual processing isn't necessary anymore. There's really no need for thinking. And like I said, I do sometimes feel this sense of kind of like falling off a cliff, but that doesn't last that long. And also, this whole integration experience with divine flow might not last that long either. It can be just a few moments. It's amazing how much healing you can receive after just a few moments of really integrating with that divine flow energy. When we allow divine flow to guide us, we are centered, we are connected to a strong driving force. And the purpose of connecting with divine flow is to feel supported, feel renewed, and have direction. All right, this is the conclusion of the TSD Mindfulness video for teaching number 27.